On March 17, 1943, in the operations center at Curle, France, the chalk scraped across the blackboard as Captain Lieutenant Guy Hessler revised the tonnage estimates, pausing uncertainly above figures that challenged reason itself. Facing Admiral Karl Donitz and the gathered staff officers, he inscribed a number that mere months before would have been branded as enemy misinformation. Yesterday, the Americans had dispatched 17 vessels, 17 within a single day. From the haze-filled room that overlooked the submarine docks at Loren, Donitz examined the grim equations of loss unfolding on the map table. Data from spies in U.S., harbors, seized wireless signals, and accounts from detained merchant mariners all converged on the same unbelievable truth. The United States was constructing ships at a pace surpassing what his U-boats could destroy, not just slightly ahead but by an immense, devastating margin. The leader of Germany's undersea fleet, the mastermind behind the tonnage campaign that had nearly famished Britain, now observed how factory output was reshaping sea battles. From 1941 to 1945, 18 U.S. shipbuilding facilities would construct 2,710 Liberty ships, averaging 3 every 2 days. What Donitz hadn't yet fully comprehended was that this represented only a fraction of a massive manufacturing surge, one that would yield more than 5,000 ships overall and turn the tide in the Battle of the Atlantic. The insight emerging in that command post would ripple through the U-boat command like an underwater blast, demolishing the confidence of sailors who once trusted in basic math to choke off the Allies' supply lines by outpacing their replacements. The idea had seemed brilliantly straightforward when Donitz outlined it to Hitler back in 1939. His projections showed that 300 Type 7 U-boats could dispatch 1 million tons of shipping monthly, and in just 1 year eliminate sufficient tonnage from the roughly 3,000 British merchant vessels to cripple their economy. The numbers left no doubt. Britain required 47 million tons of imports each year to endure. Victory in the tonnage struggle demanded that the U-boat service destroy 300,000 gross registered tons per month to exceed Britain's construction capabilities. In his leather-covered journal of the conflict, Donitz recorded with his usual exactitude, "The merchant fleets of the foe form a single vast target. Thus, the location of a sinking matters little. Ultimately, every lost ship demands a fresh replacement." This approach to tonnage warfare simplified the intricacies of sea power into mere deduction. Foe vessels reduced by losses equaled triumph or failure. By the start of 1942, the strategy looked effective. In the period U-boat personnel dubbed the Second Happy Time, raids along the American seaboard from January through August 1942, German subs destroyed 609 ships, amounting to more than 3.1 million tons. Corvette Captain Reinhard Hartigan, at the helm of U-123 near New York, entered in his log, "It's regrettable there's not 10 U-boats here rather than 1. The prey is superb." The Americans remained so lax, gaining no wisdom from 2 years of conflict. Oberleutnant Herbert Wehrer, on duty with U-230, remembered the heady calculations of that era. "We tallied without cease. A typical vessel weighed 5,000 tons. 6 of them equaled 30 tons. Our squadron of 12 subs, each claiming 6 per voyage, delivered 360,000 tons. With 40 vessels in constant action, triumph seemed within reach." Early hints of the remarkable developments in American yards arrived from unlikely origins. In September 1942, crew members rescued from the torpedoed cargo ship West Lashaway, retrieved by U-66, revealed details during questioning. A Baltimore engine oiler among the merchant seamen offhandedly remarked that his freighter had taken shape in 35 days. Captain Lieutenant Friedrich Markworth, skipper of U-66, jotted in his diary, "The captive must be deluded or fabricating. No country could assemble a 7,000-ton ship in 35 days. Our own yards need at least 6 months for that task." Yet comparable accounts persisted. Detainees from the Liberty ship William Clark, downed by U-29 in November 1942, asserted their craft was among 60 under construction at once in a single yard in Richmond, California. The seized second officer swore he had witnessed 3 launches in 1 week at U-boat headquarters. At first, these tales were brushed off as morale-sapping fabrications meant to unsettle German submariners. Corvette Captain Guy Hessler, Donitz's son-in-law and head of operations, stated in an evaluation, The Americans are evidently coaching their crews to inflate output stats if taken prisoner. Such speeds are engineeringly unfeasible. Reality proved far more astonishing than any ruse. At Henry Kaiser's innovative yards in Richmond, California, groundbreaking techniques made the improbable routine. The SS Robert E. Peary hit the water on November 12, 1942, a mere 4 days. Just 15 hours and 29 minutes following the laying of her keel, the vessel was ready to sail. Far from a mere publicity gimmick or isolated feat, this marked a profound shift in U.S. industrial practices that revolutionized the shipbuilding industry. At its core lay the use of prefabrication combined with assembly line methods. Entire superstructure modules, double hull components, rear framework units, and forward sections were fabricated off-site before being pieced together like enormous metal jigsaws. Every Liberty ship demanded about 50 miles of welds, supplanting the old riveting techniques that relied on highly trained artisans. In contrast, welders could be prepared for the job in mere weeks rather than years. Operate publications featuring images of these facilities. Back at U-boat command centers, those pictures underwent thorough examination. Vast expanses of hulls extended beyond the lens's reach, with vessels at differing points of progress. Towering cranes akin to skyscrapers shifted massive prefabricated parts weighing hundreds of tons. The shots captured a symphony of simultaneous activity, keels being set even as other ships gained engines and upper decks, while finished ones departed the outfitting piers under their own power. Oberleutnant Peter Kemmer, skipper of U-333, would later reflect in writing, "Upon viewing those images, we realized the conflict was over. They weren't constructing vessels, they were mass-producing them, much like cars." Come January 1943, U.S. shipyards had reached output levels that surpassed the darkest fears of German fleet strategists. Once verified via various spy channels, the numbers proved crushing. In January 1943, 96 ships hit the water, amounting to 850,000 tons. February brought 108 launches for 975,000 tons. By March, it was 120 ships and 100,000 tons. In 1944, the typical Liberty ship construction period shrank to 42 days. Yet this figure masked the truth. Seasoned facilities were finishing them in under 3 weeks, all while onboarding fresh personnel. The U.S. Maritime Commission's urgent shipbuilding initiative didn't merely activate dormant yards, it spawned brand new ones from scratch. Kapitänleutnant Wolfgang Luth, a top U-boat ace with 47 sinkings to his credit, expressed the hopelessness in a wartime note to his spouse that endured the conflict. "We're being ordered to pursue an unattainable goal. Just yesterday, reports surfaced of the Americans producing 100,000 tons in a single month. This isn't a battle against a fleet, it's a clash with an industrial powerhouse, the sheer scale of U.S. manufacturing prowess struck the U-boat fleet amid the March 1943 convoy engagements. HX-229 and SC-122, traveling nearby, faced assault from 40 submarines in the war's biggest Wolfpack assault. The U-boats claimed 22 vessels, totaling 146,000 tons, a seeming blow to Allied supply chains. Dönitz himself touted the triumph in an official bulletin, hailing it as evidence of the submarine's enduring dominance. Yet soon after, chilling intel updates reached the control center. During that very week of fierce combat, the U.S. had commissioned 38 new ships. The equation was undeniable. For each loss inflicted by the Wolfpack, America countered with 2 replacements. Corvette Captain Heinrich Bleich, leader of U-109, noted in his log upon patrol's end, "The seas brim with fresh hulls. Once we encountered sparse groups of weathered ships, but now endless formations appear, pristine coatings, cutting-edge gear, and stars and stripes billowing. They're burying us under sheer volume." Even more alarming were accounts of unfamiliar designs emerging. In addition to the classic Liberty types, yards were turning out quicker, Victory ships, T2 oil carriers, and purpose-built craft. Such diversity pointed not to frantic improvisation, but to deliberate strategy backed by boundless supplies. U-boat survivors, plucked from wrecks by Allied rescuers, yielded the richest details on American output. Oberleutnant Sergei Hans-Joachim Fischer, retrieved from the Atlantic after U-189, fell to British escorts in April 1943, spent 3 weeks on the recently commissioned Liberty ship James O. Goodwin en route to safety. In his after-action account, he remembered, "Everything felt brand new, the manuals still sealed in wrappers. Crew areas boasted comforts absent from our lives for ages, steaming showers, full electrical illumination, chilled provisions. The power plant featured tech surpassing our latest U-boats. This wasn't some hasty stopgap. It was a thoughtfully engineered craft assembled in just 5 weeks. The American sailors, assured of their country's triumph, chatted openly about output metrics. A deck officer even shared a news snippet on Kaiser's Richmond operations. Meant to rally homefront spirits, the piece laid out production data that stuck with me. From 1941 to 19. In the span from 1941 to 1945, 18 U.S. shipyards produced a staggering 2,151 Liberty ships, marking them as the most prolific vessel class in history. By May 1943, German naval intelligence scored what they viewed as a significant victory, securing via Spanish channels a full version of the U.S. Maritime Commission's yearly report meant for Congress. This file detailed American shipbuilding successes and forecasts with remarkable thoroughness. At his command post, Dönitz apparently remained quiet for an entire hour upon reviewing it. The figures defied belief. U.S. facilities had rolled out 4,915 merchant vessels, amounting to 36,960 and 592 tons over the course of the conflict, almost quadruple the size of the pre-war U.S. merchant fleet. Projections indicated that output in 1944 would surpass the goal set for 1943. The report disclosed that 250,000 components were manufactured in advance across the nation in 250-ton modules, then fused via welding in roughly 70 days. One part highlighted the workforce of more than 700,000 in American shipyards, encompassing 200,000 women. In contrast, German yards utilized under 80,000 personnel altogether, many of whom were unwilling conscripted laborers growing ever more hesitant. Overlooked by most, Captain Eberhard Gott, Dönitz's top aide, crunched the sobering figures. Based on ongoing output levels, even if U-boats submerged every ship in a massive convoy, an unattainable achievement, the U.S. could replenish that full capacity within 11 days. More than just the raw data, U-boat leaders were increasingly noting superior tech in American vessels that compounded their challenges. Fresh Liberty ships featured cutting-edge navigation gear, enhanced systems for handling damage, and protective fittings that outstripped those on numerous destroyer escorts from merely 2 years prior. Captain, the latest built Liberty ship displayed velocity beyond our prior intel assessments. Its protective setup incorporated radar-guided artillery that scored close hits during our urgent submersion. This disparity in capabilities reached into the building processes, too. Whereas German operations clung to extensive riveting, U.S. sites had mastered welding approaches that accelerated assembly and yielded tougher structures. Such welding conserved metal, cut build times by 30%, and allowed novices to qualify in only 2 weeks. Efforts by Germany to hasten their ship construction ended in utter disaster. The limited freighters they did finish averaged 8 months apiece. Pushing for quicker paces led to such shoddy work that multiple vessels disintegrated outright amid sea trials. The mental toll on U-boat personnel proved crushing. Sailors who patrolled in 1940 and 1941, when lone subs could devastate whole convoys, now confronted insurmountable odds. Once predators, they had morphed into prey. Machinist Johann Müller, engine specialist aboard U-758, maintained a forbidden journal that endured through the war. His July 1943 notation stated, "Veterans reminisce about our glory days, when vessels blazed across the entire seascape. Today, we feel fortunate just to return from a mission. Rumors swirl that Americans assemble hulls quicker than we can prime our torpedoes. Why throw our lives away?" The data only amplified this hopelessness. Following the U.S. entry in December 1941, the monthly sinking goal essentially doubled to 700,000 GRT. They hit that mark in just 1 month, November 1942, yet post-May 1943, typical losses plummeted to under 1/10 of that amount. Predators turned into quarry. and the tonnage battle's equation flipped with abrupt decisiveness. U-boat spirits, already battered by escalating casualties, shattered beneath these disclosures. Sub-crewmen started dubbing their boats iron sarcophagi, a phrase that would have drawn harsh discipline a year before, but had become ubiquitous enough for commanders to overlook. Confronted by undeniable proof of U.S. manufacturing dominance, Dönitz resorted to frantic steps to sustain the tonnage campaign. During a May 31, 1943, meeting with Hitler, he pushed for ramped-up U-boat output, demanding at least 40 fresh subs monthly. Hitler, drifting further from practicality, greenlit it without freeing up extra materials. Dönitz further mandated shifts in operational strategies. U-boat received orders to target laden carriers before empty ones, oilers before bulk goods haulers, and recent builds that proved tougher to offset. Yet these tweaks held no sway against the flood of American output. In his June 1943 log, Dönitz recorded with rare fervor, "Multiple channels verify the foe's output stats. We're up against not merely a navy but a manufacturing behemoth. Every sortie drains subs we can't rebuild, as the adversary unleashes multiples U-boats. We're sinking vessels every day." The calculations of the tonnage battle had turned into our inevitable doom. Central to the triumphs in U.S. ship construction stood Henry J. Kaiser, a businessman without any prior experience in shipbuilding until 1940. Techniques he honed from massive endeavors such as the Hoover Dam forever altered the shipbuilding industry. Nazi spies amassed detailed dossiers on Kaiser, desperate to grasp how a single individual's approaches could shift the outcome of the Atlantic campaign. Kaiser's breakthroughs appeared straightforward, yet proved transformative when put into practice. He introduced prefabricated building and welding processes, joining hull sections without traditional riveting. Production lines, female laborers, and round-the-clock shifts on multiple rotations turned dock facilities into efficient manufacturing plants. Nazi ship designers, after examining seized records, were shocked by Kaiser's output figures. Just the Richmond facilities reached a workforce of 90,000 at their height. With prefabrication, as one vessel took shape, parts for 5 more were being prepared at the same time. The site functioned much like a car plant, with hulls progressing along various workstations. Vice Admiral Werner Fuchs, overseer of Nazi naval production, informed Dönitz, "Kaiser has turned shipbuilding into an industrial powerhouse beyond our wildest dreams. Our facilities resemble craftsman studios. Theirs operate as assembly plants. We construct ships one by one. They produce them in masses. This gap isn't just in scale, it's fundamental." The Liberty ship emerged as an emblem of U.S. manufacturing prowess that tormented U-boat operators. Drawing from a basic British blueprint dating back to 1879, these craft were intentionally plain, sluggish, and unremarkable, yet able to haul 10,000 tons of supplies. One Liberty ship might transport 2,140 jeeps, 440 light tanks, or 260 medium tanks, or 230 million rounds of rifle ammunition. What struck fear into Nazi fleet strategists wasn't the advanced features of these ships, but their overwhelming quantity and easy replacement. When U-515, commanded by Vera Hanker, destroyed the Liberty ship Thomas McKean back in June 1942, U.S. yards rolled out 3 matching replacements that very week. Any single loss was insignificant. The entire manufacturing network was what mattered. Seized Nazi submarine commanders frequently viewed U.S. promotional reels highlighting Liberty ship assembly. A particular reel, using sped-up footage to depict a full build, left a team of seasoned U-boat veterans in awed quiet. Captain Lit Hans Jennis remembered later, "We observed them erect a whole ship in mere moments, it seemed. Sure, it was promotional material, but those vessels existed. We spotted them daily via our scopes. Fresh coats of paint, fresh ensigns, steaming toward Britain. The U.S. volume production strategies yielded surprising benefits apart from raw volume alone. Uniform designs allowed spare components to fit across countless ships. A harmed Liberty ship could get fixed in virtually any friendly harbor using off-the-shelf pieces. Nazi ships, frequently bespoke or altered uniquely, demanded bespoke replacements that could require months to produce. This framework also sped up tech upgrades. Once U-boat forces started succeeding with sound-guided torpedoes toward the end of 1943, the Americans equipped hundreds of Liberty ships with decoy noisemakers within weeks. Nazi efforts to neutralize Allied detection systems dragged on for years to cover their limited U-boat numbers. Lieutenant Heinz Schaefer, who eventually led U-977 on its notable post-war trip to Argentina, noted, "The Americans absorbed insights from each loss, rolling out fixes fleet-wide in unison. We gained knowledge as well, yet our adjustments trickled out to separate subs gradually. With great effort, they waged a factory-driven conflict. Ours was a handmade struggle." Come fall 1943, the numbers spelling defeat grew impossible to ignore. Spy assessments verified that U.S. docks had hit a pace exceeding 1.5 million tons monthly. America and Canada started outpacing sinkings with new builds as early as September 1942, delivering 713,140 tons of fresh merchant tonnage against 581 tons destroyed. The disparity had only grown larger afterward. During a gathering of U-boat squadron leaders in October 1943, Dunet laid out the data that doomed them. On a chalkboard inside the command center, he listed 3 categories. Ships destroyed, October 1943, 29 units, 156,000 tons. Ships constructed, October 1943, 140 units, 200,000 tons. Net foe increase, 111 units, 144,000 tons. Silence gripped the space. At last, Corvette Captain Vera Vinta, leader of the initial flotilla, commented, "Admiral, with these trends, the foe builds power regardless of our strikes. We're not curbing their expansion, we're just giving their builders more targets." Donitz's reply, jotted by his assistant, proved telling. "Gentlemen, we press on not to claim victory in the tonnage fight, but because obligation requires it. Every vessel we take down, even temporarily, holds back aid to our foes. We have lost the mathematics couldn't erode our sense of dignity." For typical U-boat sailors, the awareness of U.S. manufacturing prowess emerged from piecemeal insights instead of raw data. Seaman Wilhelm Hoffman, a torpedo specialist aboard U-604, maintained a hidden journal that documented this slow awakening. In March 1942, he noted sinking an aged Greek freighter, a decrepit hulk barely intact under layers of paint. "These are the vessels that are weakening Britain," he wrote. By September 1942, a fresh U.S. cargo ship appeared in the convoy, boasting crisp paint and sleek design. Its origin puzzled him. Come March 1943, every vessel in the group looked brand new, sharing uniform silhouettes as if mass-produced from templates. In July 1943, the senior seaman remarked that the Americans constructed 3 vessels for each one we destroyed. If accurate, he wondered, what's the purpose of our voyages? By October 1943, he observed 17 ships in the convoy, all under American colors and recently built. They only succeeded in impairing a single one. What's the use? Germany's attempts to grasp and challenge U.S. shipbuilding strength sparked a thorough espionage campaign. Operatives in neutral nations acquired U.S. publications. Specialized periodicals were covertly transported via Spain and Sweden. Captured merchant seamen faced rigorous questioning on yard sites, building techniques, and output speeds. The gathered intel sketched an increasingly intimidating scenario. Apart from Liberty ships, the U.S. was producing Victory ships, quicker and more advanced than Liberty's. T-2 tankers that hauled 141,000 barrels of petroleum. C-1, C-2, and C-3 freighters tailored for particular paths and loads. Scores of escort carriers and destroyer escorts. Naval Intel Officer Ernst Clear assembled a detailed assessment in December 1943, asserting, U.S. shipbuilding output surpasses our pre-war projections of their overall industrial might. They construct more vessels each year than comprised the global merchant marine beforehand. After Germany's capitulation in 1939, wait, no, that's off. The war ended in 1945, but preceding, seized U-boat skippers offered detailed statements on acknowledging American industrial dominance. Their narratives, archived in Allied debriefings, trace the mental shift from assurance to skepticism and ultimate hopelessness. Captain Fritz Julius Lemp, who led U-30 from the conflict's outset, recalled in 1940 that they figured 20 U-boats could choke Britain. Yet by 1943, with 200 active subs, they were forfeiting the Atlantic. The Americans didn't vanquish our subs outright. They overwhelmed them with a torrent of metal. Captain Lieutenant Heinrich Miller Edwards, taken after U-590's demise in July 1943, offered sharper details. At a conference, they displayed U.S. output stats. The briefer even expressed regret, admitting the figures appeared implausible, yet verified by various channels. Those quantities haunted me whenever I surfaced the scope and spotted yet another armada of fresh vessels. The closing figures of the tonnage campaign underscored the full scope of Germany's loss. Though the U-boat force had dispatched 6,000 ships amounting to 21 million GRT by war's close, the Allies constructed over 38 million tons of fresh tonnage. This surplus of 17 million tons ensured the Allies concluded the conflict with a grander merchant navy than at its inception. To Dönitz and his team, these metrics signified not merely tactical collapse, but a fundamental misjudgment. The tonnage strategy had presumed restricted assets and modest output limits. It overlooked a foe who could repurpose their whole economy into a maritime production engine. In his last diary notation prior to surrender, Dönitz reflected, "We waged the previous conflict with arms suited for the one before that. The Americans battled with industrial plants. Ultimately, their Liberty ships outmatched our U-boats not through superior design, but endless supply. We destroyed individual ships. They assembled entire navies." During August 1945, confined at Mondorf-les-Bains, Dönitz engaged in deep discussions with fellow detained German commanders. In one, the Americans manufactured ships at paces that challenged not only our output, but our very understanding. I'd tasked my aides with estimating the time for Germany to produce 2,700 freighters. Their reply, 150 years at peak efficiency. What alternative existed? To concede our whole sea doctrine was illusion, that we'd confronted an industrial colossus with little more than submarine hit-and-run tactics. We pressed on because halting meant admitting we'd never stood a chance. Paradoxically, U.S. shipyard workers frequently remained oblivious to the mental toll they inflicted. The agreement profoundly affected the U-boat fleet. Post-war discussions with employees from Kaiser's shipyards revealed their astonishment at how their work had crushed enemy morale. Margaret Rosie Thompson, who welded at Richmond Shipyard No. 2, remembered, "We simply performed our duties. Competing to surpass the output of rival teams, we inscribed messages on the vessel's exteriors, such as crafted by U.S. women or from Richmond to Hitler with affection." Little did we know that U-boat leaders were scanning those messages via their scopes and feeling despair. In a 1946 conversation, Henry Kaiser confessed he hadn't entirely understood the tactical effects of his manufacturing approaches. "My focus was on productivity, expenses per ton, and employee protection. Only post-war did I comprehend that we'd basically mechanized triumph. The Germans couldn't rival our manufacturing prowess. Each Liberty ship demonstrated that democratic systems and market-driven business could surpass authoritarian output. The figures deliver the ultimate narrative with stark precision. German U-boat fleet, 1,162 U-boats deployed, 777 U-boats destroyed, 30,000 submariners perished, 75% fatality ratio, 2,099 Allied vessels dispatched. U.S. Ship construction, 2,710 Liberty ships assembled, 534 Victory ships assembled, over 500 additional cargo ships assembled, overall more than 5,000 vessels created. During maximum output, U.S. yards generated the full pre-war merchant fleet capacity within merely 3 years. The computations that Dönitz had meticulously devised back in 1939 weren't merely overcome, they were utterly dismantled. After the war talks with U-boat survivors showed the profound influence of acknowledging U.S. production power on them. Numerous confessed that by mid-1943 they realized the conflict was over, not due to battlefield losses, but owing to output data. Corvette Captain Adalbert Schnee, among the most honored U-boat leaders, remarked at a 1975 gathering of former soldiers, "We proved exceptional fighters, overcome by bookkeepers and plant laborers. Each missile we launched drained the Reich resources equal to constructing 5 residences. Every Liberty ship the Americans produced cost them far less than our missiles. We waged the incorrect battle using unsuitable tools against a mismatched foe." This mental toll lingered past the conflict. Plenty of ex-servicemen grappled with grasping their total misjudgment of U.S. strengths. Heinrich Lehmann Willenbrock, the acclaimed leader of U-96 featured in Das Boot, eventually joined commercial shipping and saw Liberty ships running smoothly into the 1960s. He noted, "Those vessels, labeled as hasty junk and scarcely ocean-ready, endured beyond our top U-boats by years. It served as the ultimate affront. Their disposable craft outperformed our premier subs." In February 1943, an extraordinary paper spread among U-boat flotilla leaders, penned by an unidentified aide, subsequently revealed as Corvette Captain Hans Rudolf Rosing. It offered a numerical breakdown that turned out visionary. Present U.S. output, 1 million tons per month, rising steadily. Existing dispatch pace, 400,000 tons per month, dropping off. Net Allied increase, 600,000 tons per month. Under these trends, by December 1943, the Allies would have restored every deficit from 1939. By December 1944, the Allied trade fleet would surpass pre-war levels by 100%. By December 1945, Allies would control double the global 1939 merchant volume. Verdict: the tonnage struggle isn't slipping away. It's already gone. Numbers don't deceive. Headquarters under Dönitz quashed the paper, yet duplicates endured. All forecasts turned out understated. The Allies surpassed these estimates handily. Captain Lieutenant Peter Kaymer, known as Ali, skipper of U-333, delivered maybe the sharpest encapsulation of the U-boat fleet's awareness of American factory dominance. In his post-war account, he penned, "Propaganda painted America as a mixed-breed land of jazz players and film ranchers, unfit for true combat. Then we discovered they were assembling vessels quicker than we could tally, much less dispatch them. Every Liberty ship stood as a 7,000-ton rebuke to our Führer's illusions. I recall precisely when I sensed our downfall." March 1943. I'd just taken down a cargo carrier, a perfect strike, when my deck officer summoned me to the scope. On the distant line, he'd detected yet another group. 40 vessels, fresh from yards, all U.S. made, all bound for Britain. I carried 2 missiles remaining, 2 against 40 hulls. That summed up our downfall's equation. We were U-boat specialists, premier naval fighters. We believed bravery and expertise would prevail over sheer volume. Yet you can't strike a factory figure with a torpedo. You can't submerge a conveyor belt through sheer guts. The Americans had turned their whole economy into armament, while we pursued their yields with subs. It resembled testimony, preserved in the Nuremberg trial records, stands as one of the starkest confessions from the conflict. By the start of 1943, intelligence updates had made it clear to me that the United States was constructing around 140 vessels each month, whereas our submarines were managing to destroy under 40. Basic calculations revealed we were falling behind in the shipping volume battle by a margin of 3-1, and that gap was widening progressively. Yet what choice was there? Yield control of the Atlantic without resistance? Permit the Allies to assemble their assault armadas undisturbed? We pressed on, not with hopes of victory, but to compel the foes to allocate assets toward safeguarding merchant groups, constructing additional hulls, and sustaining the enormous network to combat our undersea raiders. The real misfortune wasn't our defeat in the shipping struggle. That outcome was inescapable after America's involvement. The misfortune lay in our initial conviction that triumph was possible. We had dared the planet's premier manufacturing giant to a fabrication showdown. The conclusion was inevitable from the outset. As the fighting concluded, the figures were so staggering that numerous U-boat survivors at first dismissed them as fabrications. In a detention facility in Louisiana, seized U-boat leaders viewed a documentary on U.S. naval construction. It asserted that during its height, the Yankee maritime industry could replicate the whole peacetime merchant fleet capacity within merely 3 years. Captain Lieutenant Johann Moore rose and labeled it as deceitful hype, unfeasible, falsehood. The U.S. facility overseer countered by organizing a visit to the Houston waterway yards. The Teutonic commanders observed scores of Liberty vessels in various stages of assembly, multitudes of laborers fusing metal and piecing together frames, and finished craft launching into the water every day. Moore subsequently recounted, "There we were, 30 U-boat leaders, observing them fabricate more shipping volume in a single morning than our top wolf pack had ever destroyed. A few shed tears, others chuckled, the harsh guffaw of individuals who at last grasp a cruel jest. We had attempted to empty the sea as the Americans replenished it using a high-pressure stream. The account of U-boat skippers awakening to American maritime dominance transcends a mere chronicle of manufacturing prowess. It marks the pivot in contemporary combat from operational prowess to output volume, from personal valor to organized productivity. Overlooked Captain Reinhard Surin, who had capably led U-564, delivered the sharpest insight during a 1960 discussion. We discovered far too tardily that in today's conflicts, bravery and expertise count for little compared to assembly lines and arc welders. The Americans didn't overcome our U-boats through advanced designs or finer strategies. They prevailed via unmatched calculations. They grasped that warfare had evolved into a formula, and they generated far more answers than the obstacles we could pose. The emotional arc of U-boat leaders, from assurance to denial to hopelessness, echoes the wider ordeal of the German armed forces. They had readied themselves for maneuver-based engagements, yet faced manufacturing-based ones. They had drilled to engage vessels and instead battled assembly plants. Even years post-conflict, Teutonic Fleet personnel grappled with the scale of Yankee industrial feats. During a 1985 gathering of U-boat alumni in Kiel, the main orator, ex-Korvettenkapitan and Captain Eric Topp, spoke to the gathered remnants. "Sirs, we formed the most elite submarine fleet in history. Our preparation was outstanding. Our craft were top-notch. Our methods were groundbreaking. We devastated millions of tons of merchant traffic and nearly brought Britain to famine. Yet we fell to an element we failed to comprehend and couldn't oppose: the Yankee talent for converting their whole populace into armaments. Each American homemaker purchasing victory securities, each youth laboring in the docks, each agriculturist supplying sustenance to factory hands. They all served as arms in a campaign we lacked the means to counter. We destroyed their transports. They fabricated replacements. We destroyed those. They fabricated even greater numbers. It wasn't combat. It was a deluge. Let us commemorate our deceased shipmates not by deluding ourselves about potential success, but by confronting reality. We were fighters from a bygone era, clashing with adversaries who had forged a novel realm. They didn't best us with superior submersibles or unmatched navigation. They bested us with Liberty ships, homely, sluggish, mass-fabricated emblems of a republic that could remake its full citizenry into a munitions depot. That is the wisdom we owe to future generations. In today's strife, the workshop is as vital as the combat zone, the fabrication chain as essential as the vanguard. We absorbed this truth via our viewfinders, beholding interminable lines of fresh Yankee hulls heading to distances beyond our grasp. The conflict's close-delivered conclusive counts that validated what U-boat commanders had discerned by 1943. The Reich required sinking 700,000 tons per month to claim the shipping war post-U.S. entry, yet managed that feat solely once, in November 1942. In opposition, American docks were yielding beyond 1.5 million tons monthly by 1943. The toll of this numerical setback was immense. Out of the 40,000 personnel assigned to the U-boat, 30,000 perished, resulting in a 75% loss rate, the most severe among all military units from any country in World War II. These troops had performed heroically, yet within a plan that statistics had condemned right from the outset. In his post-war recollections, Admiral Karl Donitz offered a poignant summary of the tonnage campaign. "We figured that knocking out enough shipping each month would bring Britain to its knees. We failed to account for America's capacity to produce 2 million tons per month. This wasn't just an error in math. It stemmed from a lack of foresight. Such vast manufacturing might was beyond our comprehension, as we'd never witnessed anything like it. Only when it appeared in our submarine scopes and spy dispatches did we grasp its scale. But by then, the conflict had ended. We pressed on for another 2 years before conceding the truth. Nowadays, just 2 functional Liberty ships survive from the total of 2,910 constructed. The SS John W. Brown and the SS Jeremiah O'Brien endure as tribute vessels. They symbolize not so much shipbuilding ingenuity as sheer productive prowess, evoking the era when America reshaped itself into the arsenal of democracy, as President Franklin Roosevelt described it. To the German U-boat command, these vessels embodied far more. They were the tangible embodiment of statistical downfall. Every bolt, every seam, every unit of load-bearing space formed part of a formula they could never solve. The Germans had entered the fray confident in their engineering dominance, their elite preparation, and the certainty of triumph. Instead, they learned that battles could be decided in factories, that success could be forged by laborers unfamiliar with the sea. The tale of U-boat leaders awakening to the reality that America outproduced their sinkings is, at its core, about warfare's evolution. It highlights the shift where manufacturing output eclipsed tactical expertise, where assembly processes proved more critical than battlefields and construction outmatched demolition in power. Ultimately, the German U-boat fleet fell not to stronger enemy navies, smarter strategies, or bolder crews. It succumbed to 2,710 Liberty ships assembled from 1941 to 1945, each a 7-ton testament that in contemporary combat, numbers outweigh martial talent, and the country that manufactures the most, the quickest, claims the final win. Those U-boat officers who made it through the war bore this insight lifelong. The harsh realization that they were exceptional fighters mismatched to the conflict's nature, clashing with subs against ledgers, launching strikes with warheads against foes equipped with production chains. They aimed to dominate a tonnage battle, only to find too late that their adversary had altered tonnage's very definition. Their experience serves as both caution and teaching. In the era of mechanized combat, bravery and expertise matter, yet they pale against superior output volume. The U-boat of the Kriegsmarine, ranked among history's premier armaments, crewed by some of the boldest and most adept fighters ever. But they were overcome by something as ordinary as output figures, as unheroic as joining metal, as straightforward as outpacing sinkings with new builds. Such is the ultimate insight from the tonnage struggle. In today's wars, success goes not to the valiant but to the efficient producers, not to the adept but to the methodical, not to destroyers but to creators. The German U-boat leaders absorbed this truth via their viewing lenses, observing unbroken convoys of fresh U.S. vessels steaming by, each a statistical validation of their unavoidable loss.